Some secrets don't fade. They burn quietly, waiting to destroy everything you thought you could keep hidden. I never really paid much attention to my sister's boyfriends. They came and went like the seasons. Some stuck around a little longer, others didn't even make it past the first holiday. Olivia had this habit of falling hard and fast, always convinced that each new guy was the one. After watching her heart break too many times, I stopped bothering to remember their names. So when she called me, her voice bubbling with excitement, saying she had someone really special to introduce to the family, I barely reacted. Just another guy, I told myself, another name I wouldn't need to remember. Still, when she insisted I come over for dinner, I couldn't exactly say no. Family was family, and Olivia had a way of guilt-tripping me into doing things whether I wanted to or not. That's how I ended up standing in the middle of her cozy apartment, holding a beer, waiting to meet the latest man in her life. The door opened, and there he was, Alex. The first thing I noticed was his presence. He was tall, broad-shouldered, effortlessly confident. His dark hair was a little messy, and his jawline was sharp but softened by a calm, knowing smile. He moved like someone completely at ease with himself, secure, charming, maybe even a little too charming. "This is Alex," Olivia said, practically glowing as she clung to his arm like he was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Alex stepped forward, extending his hand. "Hey, man. Olivia's told me a lot about you." I shook his hand, noticing his firm grip. "Yeah," he smirked. "Hope it's good stuff." Mostly, I thought, and to my surprise, I laughed. Something about him was disarming, like he already knew exactly how to handle this awkward introduction. I'd expected stiff, polite small talk or worse, someone distant and uninterested. But Alex wasn't either. He was relaxed, natural, like he belonged there. Like he'd always belonged there. Dinner went as expected. Olivia filled the room with her stories, how she and Alex met, how amazing he was, how lucky she felt. I half listened, sneaking glances at him. He was polite but genuine. No pretense. He listened when she spoke, his gaze steady, a quiet smile always lingering at the edge of his lips. He felt real, and I hated that I couldn't stop noticing it. I liked him, and it wasn't supposed to be that way. I was supposed to sit there, quietly judge him, maybe toss out a sarcastic remark or two, and count the days until he inevitably became another name in Olivia's long list of almosts. But instead, I found myself wanting to talk to him, to actually know him. "So, Will," Alex said, turning to me and taking a sip of his drink, "Olivia says you're into old movies." I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. I mean, I like a bit of everything, but yeah, classics are kind of my thing." He nodded. "Nice. I'm more of a sci-fi guy, but I've been trying to get into the older stuff. Any recommendations?" I hesitated. This was new. Usually my sister's boyfriends only cared about impressing her, not talking to me. But Alex was different, and that's when everything started to shift. That night, the way we connected changed something in me. It started with a simple question, a casual request for movie recommendations, but the way he asked made it feel different. He actually wanted to hear my answer. Before I knew it, we were talking. Really talking. Movies, music, even work. He was sharp, funny, and had this easy way of keeping the conversation alive. More than that, he was present. I'd met plenty of people who pretended to listen, nodding along while waiting for their turn to talk, but Alex wasn't like that. He paid attention. Across the table, Olivia watched us with a proud smile. "I knew you two would get along," she said. I forced a half smile back, but inside I wasn't sure how I felt. Because the more I talked to Alex, the more I realized something I didn't want to admit, something deep, quiet, and undeniable. The way his eyes held mine when I spoke. The way his laughter filled the room like it belonged there. The way he leaned in just a little closer than necessary. I shook the thought away, convincing myself it was nothing, just a passing moment. But deep down, I knew the truth. Alex wasn't just another one of Olivia's boyfriends. He was different. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if that was a good thing. Dinner went on, and Olivia started talking about an upcoming weekend trip to a cabin upstate. I nodded at all the right moments, but my mind was elsewhere, still trying to make sense of the strange pull I felt toward Alex, the way my stomach tightened whenever he laughed, the way my pulse quickened when his attention turned to me. Then, as if sensing my thoughts, Alex caught my gaze across the table. He held it just a moment too long, Long enough for my breath to catch, long enough for something unspoken to pass between us. I was the first to look away, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. This is nothing, I told myself. I'm overthinking. But the truth was, I hadn't felt a connection like this in a long time, and I had no idea what to do about it. After dinner, Olivia insisted we stay for drinks. The three of us sank into the couch, music playing softly in the background, laughter spilling into the warm light of the room. At some point, Olivia curled up beside Alex, resting her head on his shoulder, and I felt it. A sharp, unfamiliar ache in my chest. What's wrong with me? I forced a smile, pretending everything was fine. But deep down, I knew I was in trouble. The more time I spent around Alex, the more I realized this wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was real, complicated, and I didn't know how long I could pretend it wasn't there. Olivia was thrilled that Alex and I got along so well, and I played along, letting her believe everything was perfectly normal, but something had shifted. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew one thing for sure. My life was about to change, and I wasn't ready for it. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Just a natural friendship forming because Olivia wanted us to get along. That's all it was. Nothing unusual, but the thing about little things is, they add up. Before I realized it, Alex had become part of my daily routine. It wasn't just the casual texts or the easy banter. It was how effortless it all felt. I'd never been the type to keep up with people outside my small circle, but with Alex, conversations didn't need a reason. Sometimes he'd send a dumb meme in the middle of the day. Other times it was a simple, "you'd like this," followed by a song or a movie recommendation. And before I knew it, I was doing the same, finding excuses to text him, catching myself waiting for his reply. Olivia loved it. She thought it was great that her boyfriend and her little brother were getting along so well. If anything, she encouraged it. Go out for drinks together, she'd say. Bond. You guys are like family now. And the more she pushed, the more excuses we found to spend time alone. The first time we hung out without her, it wasn't even planned. I was at a coffee shop working when Alex spotted me by chance. Grinning like we'd arranged it, he slid into the seat across from me. Look at you being all productive, he teased, nudging my laptop. Didn't peg you for the coffee shop type, I shot back. Didn't peg you for the just show up uninvited type, he countered, leaning back with a smirk. I'll take that as an invitation to stay, he said. And he did. What was supposed to be a quick coffee run turned into 2 hours of talking. Work complaints, old stories, and ridiculous what-if scenarios that had us laughing like idiots. I told myself it was fine, harmless. But the more time I spent with Alex, the more I noticed things I shouldn't. The way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. The way he leaned in when he was really listening. The way a simple, "that's a good idea, Will," made my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with pride. Then one night, it finally hit me how deep I was in. I had just gotten home when my phone buzzed. It was Alex. Alex, you busy? Me, not really. What's up? Alex, could use a drink. Long day. I stared at the message, knowing I probably should say no. But the thought of seeing him, even for a little while, was too tempting. Me, yeah. Where? We met at a bar near his place, one of those dimly lit spots where the music wasn't too loud and the drinks hit hard. He looked different that night, tired. His usual easy smile was gone, replaced with something quieter. Tough day? I asked, sliding into the seat beside him. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. You could say that. Work's been rough. And Olivia... He stopped himself with a quick shake of his head. Never mind. Don't want to talk about it. That was the first time I'd ever seen Alex hesitate when it came to her. He wasn't the type to complain, especially not about Olivia. If they had problems, he never let it show. But the way he downed his drink in one go told me there was more going on than he wanted to admit. I should have asked. I should have pressed him. Instead, I let the moment pass, changed the subject, and pretended I hadn't noticed the way he sighed, like he was holding something back. We talked for hours that night. And for the first time, I saw him differently. Not as my sister's boyfriend. Not as someone I had to tolerate, just Alex. And the more I got to know him, the harder it became to ignore the pull between us. By the time we left the bar, the streets were mostly empty. City lights stretched across the pavement, painting everything in silver and gold. We walked side by side, neither of us in a rush to say goodbye. At some point, Alex nudged my shoulder playfully. You know, you're a lot cooler than I thought. Than you thought I'd be? I smirked, trying to ignore the way my pulse quickened at the touch. That's supposed to be a compliment. Take it however you want. We laughed, but the laughter lingered too long. It felt charged, like something had shifted, something we couldn't name. Then a car sped by too close, splashing through a puddle. Alex grabbed my arm, pulling me back just in time. For a second, neither of us moved. His hand stayed on my arm, firm, grounding. I could feel the warmth of his touch, the quick rhythm of his breathing. He was close, too close. When he finally looked at me, there was something in his eyes I couldn't read. Something that made it hard to breathe. Thanks, I muttered, forcing a shaky laugh. He blinked, stepping back. Yeah, no problem. We both smiled, but it didn't reach our eyes. Later that night, as I walked home, I kept replaying that moment. The closeness. The silence. The almost. I told myself it was nothing and that I was overthinking, but I knew I wasn't. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something else. Something that had been building for weeks in every glance, every shared joke, every second that lasted a little too long, and then came the night everything changed. Olivia had to work late and told Alex to stop by my place instead, said we could hang out until she got home. I should have said no. But I didn't. He showed up with a six-pack and that familiar smile that always made my pulse skip. Might as well make a night of it, he said. We ordered food, played an old movie, and tried to keep it light. But somewhere along the way, the air shifted again. The conversation slowed, the laughter faded, and what was left was quiet, the kind that hums with everything unspoken. Alex let out a long breath. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, he said quietly. With Olivia? I asked. He nodded slowly. Sometimes it feels like I'm just pretending everything's perfect. I didn't know what to say. The look in his eyes was raw, tired and real in a way I'd never seen before, and then the silence stretched again. Neither of us moved. Neither of us needed to. He turned slightly toward me, hesitant, searching, and for one small, impossible moment, it felt like the whole world had narrowed down to the space between us. One heartbeat, one breath, one decision, and then, just like that, everything changed, he muttered, eyes wide, almost panicked. I swallowed hard, my chest rising and falling too fast. I can't, Alex said, his voice trembling like he was barely holding himself together. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady himself, but it was clear something inside him was breaking. Then without another word, he grabbed his coat and hurried out the door. The next morning, I sat across from Olivia as she gushed about him, how kind he'd been lately, how she thought he might be the one. I smiled where I needed to, nodding in all the right places, but every word twisted something inside me tighter. I told myself to stay away from him. That distance would help, that time would dull whatever this was. But then, late one night, I heard a knock at my door. I didn't even have to look. I already knew it was him. Alex stood there, shoulders tense, eyes unreadable. The air between us shifted instantly, heavy with everything left unsaid. You shouldn't be here, I said quietly. I know, he breathed, his jaw tightening. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke, but the silence said enough. Finally, I stepped aside and he walked in. He paced my living room, running a hand through his hair. He looked worn down, like something had been eating at him for weeks. I can't do this anymore, he muttered. Do what? I asked, though part of me already knew. Pretend, he said, turning toward me. His eyes held guilt, confusion, and something deeper, something I'd been afraid to name. I've tried to ignore it, to act like nothing happened, but it's there every time I see you. Every time I hear your voice. The words hit harder than I expected. I couldn't breathe. This was dangerous, reckless, but it was real. He shook his head, his hands clenched at his sides. I can't stop thinking about you. For a moment, everything went still. The world outside disappeared. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I realized I felt the same way. Had for a while. And then, before I could stop myself, the words slipped out. The moment I said them, the space between us shattered. Alex stepped forward, closing the distance in one breath. His hands found my shoulders, pulling me closer, his voice breaking as he whispered my name. The air around us seemed to hum with something neither of us could control, fear, longing, regret, all tangled together. We stood there, frozen in that fragile space where right and wrong blurred into one. His forehead rested against mine for a moment. No words, just the quiet sound of two people trying not to fall apart. "We can't keep doing this," he whispered. "I know," I said softly. But I didn't move. Neither did he. Time seemed to stretch, the silence louder than anything else. I could feel everything we weren't saying, everything we'd tried to bury, rising between us like a wave we couldn't stop. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't going away. No matter how hard we tried, no matter how much it hurt, something between us had already crossed the line, quietly, completely, and without either of us meaning to. I felt him in every heartbeat, every breath, like the space between us had completely vanished. By the time we finally pulled away, we were both trembling, caught between guilt and something neither of us could name. "This stays between us," Alex whispered, his forehead resting against mine. I nodded, though a quiet part of me already knew this wasn't the kind of secret that stayed buried. Still, for that brief moment, it was enough. It was ours. He left before sunrise. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my thoughts unraveling. I knew, from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same, but it didn't end there. We told ourselves it had been a mistake, that we'd stop, that it could never happen again. But every time we were alone, every time Alex found some excuse to see me, the same gravity pulled us back together. It wasn't about what happened between us. It was what it meant. The way he'd look at me like he was searching for something he couldn't find anywhere else. The quiet moments, the stolen glances, the late-night talks that lingered too long. He'd whisper, "We shouldn't be doing this." And I'd whisper back, "Then tell me to stop." But he never did. We became a secret, hidden in plain sight. Every word, every look felt dangerous. And yet, we kept crossing the same line, again and again, as if we were both waiting for it all to catch up with us. And eventually, it did. The morning after our last night together, something felt different. Alex was quiet, distant. He moved slower than usual, lost somewhere inside his own thoughts. "You're thinking about telling her, aren't you?" I asked softly. He paused, exhaling. "I have to. And what happens when you do?" He didn't answer. His silence said enough. Finally, he whispered, "I can't keep lying to her." "Then what happens to us?" His jaw tightened. His voice barely broke a whisper. "There is no us." The words hit like a blade. Before I could say anything, before I could even breathe, he was gone. All day, I waited, checking my phone, pacing, replaying every moment in my head. Nothing. No message. No call. Just silence. Until Olivia's name flashed across my screen. Her voice was fragile, trembling. "Tell me it's not true," she whispered. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. "Olivia, tell me you didn't sleep with my boyfriend." The world stopped. I couldn't answer. The silence stretched until I heard it, the sound of her breaking. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice cracking. And then the line went dead. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. I just knew I had to find her.